Donc, rebonjour, j'espère que vous avez eu un bon déjeuner.
Welcome back. I hope you had a nice lunch. We enjoyed ours. So welcome back to our event, Health as a Lever Against Climate Change. We talked about solutions, about action. So how are they implemented at the city level? So that's what we are going to talk about. We had about an example in Finland, in Lahti. How can we synchronize this? And this is what we're going to look at.
Cet événement, si vous regardez de loin, en ligne, il faut savoir que vous pouvez envoyer vos questions dans la plateforme.
You can send your questions in the platform, on the platform, and you can use the hashtags as well. It's an important example for people in the world to see what is happening today. SP France, hashtag SP France, hashtag ENFI for climate. Could be one single hashtag or three separate hashtags.
I'm sorry about that. I have to cue this up. I'm sorry. The hazards of an iPad. Miriam Weber, of course, Miriam. Miriam Weber, Health City Coordinator, Utrecht. And you come in place of your Vice Mayor of Utrecht, Eelco Ehrenberg. Maybe you can explain quickly why. And you are in charge of healthy urban living for everyone in Utrecht. Let's talk about the results and what you plan to do, because I know that there is a plan, you have a vision for 2040. And that's also interesting. More greenery, more water, 10-minute city. How are things going now?
Thank you for inviting me here. And indeed, I'm happy to be here in person as well and replacing my vice mayor. So I will have more the professional perspective and not only the political perspective. We had local elections 3 weeks ago, and our vice mayor is today in, I think, very interesting discussions and leading on his political party to form the new local government. So that's why he unfortunately had to excuse himself. But I'm happy to be here, and indeed, I would like to elaborate a little bit more about the vision we have for Utrecht for 2040, which will address health and health inequalities, but climate adaptation as well. You probably all are aware of Utrecht being one of the fourth largest cities in the Netherlands, and we are located in the middle of the Netherlands, and we are quite an attractive city, I must say. So there are a lot of people coming to the city because of the universities, for the jobs we have, and for the fact that it is a quite green, healthy, cultural and diverse city with a quite high educated population. But this gives us challenges as well. And as you can imagine, a growing population, and we will grow with quite a number of people. Another 100,000 people will come to the city within the next 20 years. So this brings us a lot of pressure to the public space, a lot of mobility, a lot of people using the green areas and the terraces. And as you know, in the Netherlands, we are quite famous for using the bike for everything. We had the honor to count for the first bicycle traffic jam in the world as well, because we all have at least 2 bikes in the Netherlands. But we want and we need to grow as a city, but we want to do this in a very healthy way. So that's why we, a few years ago, adopted our vision of healthy urban living for everyone. And this means that health is in all our policies, in all our decision making. Health and health inequalities should be addressed. So in case we're talking about health, it's about not only the absence of diseases, but it's being able to cope with all the stress and actions in your daily life. It's about making healthy choices. It's being part of a society. And thus the need for us to address health in our social domains, in our infrastructure decision making, and in our education, to give just a few examples. In order to combine this ambition of healthy urban living and the demanding growth and the need to build all these additional dwellings, we need another 60,000 houses to be built in the coming years. This means that we need to reserve space for accommodating all the healthy topics and the climate adaptation measures as well. And therefore we developed what we call the Utrecht Barcode. And this barcode illustrates the sum of all the elements that form a healthy city. So this means that we have a footprint, so a spatial demand in square meters for example, green, for houses, for sport, for sustainable energy, for water, infrastructure and culture, just to name a few. And how does this translate into practice? Just to give you a few examples of how we have been implementing this during the last, say, 8 to 10 years. We stimulate active mobility. We want to have the cars out of the city, and particularly the city center. And we are prioritizing the walking and biking. And this is an example of an area where you see this it's really in the city center where we had a lot of cars parked, cars getting in. And we changed this into what we call the shared space, or an area where transportation is out, no cars anymore there, and people are only biking and walking there.
So is it now a 10-minute city now, or a 15-minute city?
Well, we aim for the 10-minute city, and this is I think this is another example. Yeah, this is an example of the 10 minutes, indeed. So another, I think, a really impressive change we made. Utrecht was a medieval city, or is a medieval city, and we had an old city moat. And during the 17th, when we all thought, okay, everyone wants to go into the city center to go shopping or to see, go to the theater, you do that by car. So we changed our waterway into a motorway, and we had a 6-lane motorway right into the city center. And already in the 80s, people started to rumor against that, and they said, we want our water back. Right. We don't want the cars in. And this is how it looks since last year. We have brought back the water into the city. So people walk there, exercise there, they meet each other, and we have a lot of green and biodiversity over there.
Does that not cause congestion in other parts of the city where the cars are redistributed? Some people make that claim, right?
That's what people claim. And when we made these changes and the previous examples, the entrepreneurs were really afraid that they would lose income, because no one, of course, would come to the city center by foot or by bike. It's the opposite.
Really?
So there are more and more entrepreneurs even asking to turn their streets into pedestrian areas.
I live in Brussels. I think it's the same thing.
Yeah.
There was the same thing, turning everything into pedestrian zones downtown, and they said, no, all the business is going to go away. Well, it didn't.
It didn't. No.
There are more people.
There are more people. Yeah, for sure. So I think these are really nice examples in showing that you can change a city into a biking and a walking or public transport city, and taking out the cars. Another way how we are facilitating, of course, the use of bikes is that we make what we call these highways for bicycles to connect the city. So all the parts through the city and even out of the city to green areas or to neighboring municipalities.
These are dedicated bikeways?
These are dedicated bikeways, and they are free, so adjacent to the roads. And as a biker, you even get priority for your traffic lights compared to the cars. So you move faster through the city.
I see Youth for Climate over here nodding, saying, yep, that's what we need to do.
That's that's nice to get a
Great.
confirmation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Third party.
But sometimes this brings us to challenges as well. So we were looking at this area where we have a new area of Utrecht to the western part. It's called Leidse Rijn. It's where I live. And we had to connect that to the old city. But we have a very important canal running through the city, connecting with Amsterdam. And what we did was building a bridge, which is a purely cycling and walking bridge, and connected that to the roof of a primary school, what is over there, because we didn't have enough space. So the only solution was integrate the bridge into the roof and the playgrounds of the school. And the school has now a very nice area on several levels in which they can play and use and have their own sport events as well. So you have to come up with innovative ways. Another innovation in stimulating biking is this bicycle parking, which is the largest bicycle parking in the world, which houses 12,500 parking places. And it's next to the railway station, the central railway station. So it's the most convenient way just to grab your train and to travel to Paris, for example.
You see that all over the Netherlands, but this is amazing. 12,000 bikes?
12,500 parking places, and combined with a few other parking places we have, it sums up to 30,000 just around the central station. Wow. And you can park your bike there for free for 24 hours. It's inside. You can even bike through it to get out to the other part of the center. Mm-hmm. So it's a very safe and convenient way of getting your bikes out of the public space, because that's one of the other challenges. When you stimulate biking, people need to park their bike, and we had a lot of bikes standing just throughout the whole city, taking away space for people that want to go by foot. So that's why you need these parking facilities. Another way of stimulating the sustainable ways of moving is that we have, as the only Dutch city, the first fully low emission zone in the Netherlands. So the whole city center is banned for diesel cars from a certain age. And we have the highest amount of electric charging stations for electric vehicles. And even the way of storage of solar energy in cars in case of high demands and high peaks. Yeah, I will speed up. Okay. That was an example which has quite a benefits on air pollution. Another example from air pollution, and particularly in involving citizens, is that we have a campaign to discourage wood burning and subsidies for people who want to remove their stove in order to achieve the WHO new guidelines on air quality. But we can't do it by ourselves. So the previous example is something we want to stimulate citizens, but we want to involve others as well, so NGOs and private companies. And this is an example that went worldwide. We want to have sustainable bus stops. And we just asked in our tender who can come up with something to have our bus stops more sustainably and biodiverse friendly. And then the winning bid was this bee-friendly bus stop. So all the bus stops throughout the city have green roofs in order to have a kind of a highway for the bees in the city. And this is then wrapping up towards the end. We do this in order to address health differences, health inequalities. As we see that in the neighborhoods, there are quite large differences in life expectancy, in perceived good health. The dark blue areas have a 12-year shorter life expectancy than the yellow ones. And this is for us the key reason to focus specifically on health inequalities, on specific neighborhoods, and on those and that what is needed for the people to have healthy lifestyles, to have less stress due to income problems, and to have a good housing and sustainable housing facilities. as in our opinion, the work is done in cities, with citizens, with the parties and organizations at city level, of course in collaboration with national and international governments, but we can make the change and we make the global goals our local goals.
So
thank you.
Think global, act local. Thank you, Miriam.
Yes, for
Thank
sure.
you very much.
Yeah.
That all sounds great, and we see a lot of that happening in Netherlands. Now, what about Greece? What about Athens? You would think Athens, no way. Well, why don't we listen to Eleni Myrivili, who is a Chief Resilience Officer in Athens. We were hoping to have her online, but she is suddenly very busy traveling, so she made a quick little video. Let's take a listen.
Hello to everyone. I am delighted to be with you today. I will be talking about heat and health in the city of Athens and what we have been doing the last for the last few years. So I'll start quickly by giving a background about the city of Athens. The city of Athens is part of a metropolitan area that has 36 other municipalities. We're the biggest municipality and the most used, because even though we have about 700,000 inhabitants, because it's the center of a larger metropolitan area, the city is used by approximately 1.5 million users daily. This is a view from above, where you can see that a large part of Athens, actually 80% of Athens, is impermeable surfaces. It's built mostly cement, concrete, and asphalt. We also have extraordinary density. We are the second. We have neighborhoods that are second in density only to Paris, with 16,830 people per square kilometer. And also, it's a city that has exploded in the way that it actually was built. So it's built very anarchically. This is a view again from above to take a sense of what the city kind of looks like or feels like. And this is a map that kind of gives you an idea about the green parts of Athens, or the green infrastructure generally of the city. We have less than 7 square meters per inhabitant of green, which I think 7 square meters is the average for the EU countries. And as you can see from the map, it's very unevenly distributed in the city. Something that is important to mention, however, is that we have a lot of trees in street lines. So there's a large percentage of trees out of the 140,000 trees overall in the city. About 95,000 are in street lines. As you all know, temperatures have been rising really exponentially. The last decade has been the hottest decade that has been recorded globally. We know also that heat waves and rising heat is the #1 killer compared to all other extreme weather events. Heat claims many more lives. And this is a little known fact, because heat is a silent killer, as we say. It's difficult. We don't see it. Often the mortality and morbidity is not fully reported, but more and more we realize that this heat is really deadly for humans, especially in urban environments where we have what we call the urban heat island. So as you probably already know, cities are because of the materials and because that they're made of, as I said, steel and concrete and glass and asphalt, they actually absorb heat, which they radiate at night. And during the day and both during the night, the centers of cities are much warmer than the outskirts of cities. So we have in Athens, particularly the urban heat island effect, as we call it, is much higher in the center of Athens, to the point that it reaches 10 degrees during the day and 5 degrees difference during the night between the center of the city and the peri-urban areas. We report every year about 200 deaths that are due to heat. We believe that the numbers are higher. We have, of course, excess electricity demands, which goes up 4.1% for every degree temperature that we go up in a city that we have a very large percentage of energy poverty. So we have a lot of people that don't have means to cool themselves substantially. Commercial activity declines, so the whole city kind of becomes less dynamic and less fun in the summer, in the high heat, and also heat and the dry heat that we have really is the number one cause of peri-urban fires, which are really a problem for our whole country. What have we been doing? We're focusing the different types of actions. I focus the different types of action in 3 general categories: awareness, preparedness, and redesign. In awareness, I will quickly focus in one of the things that we're doing that I think we believe is a game changer, which is a health-based categorization of heat waves. So we have gone back and seen for 3 decades, we have gathered all the data for what we call air masses that have sat on top of the city of Athens, which measuring temperatures, humidity, atmospheric pressure, it's a different kind of data, and also measuring, figuring out specific typologies for these air masses and correlating them to the mortality that we see in the city during those particular times. So we have figured out through an algorithm percentages of risk, and we created 3 categories, which will we will have category 1 heat wave, category 2, and category 3, which will be the most extreme heat wave, so that people can understand better what the danger is and understand better the risk of heat waves to people's health, and also so that policymakers can link specific measures to different levels of risk. So we're going to pilot this summer, this system of categorization that has within it the notion of vulnerability. So it's both, this system of categorization gives both the level of heat, so how high the heat is, the temperatures are, but also what type of vulnerability will come with this particular type of heat for our city. So we think this is really important for making it more clear in the minds of people. We also have other campaigns and an application that shows risk for people in real time, etc., that we've developed in Athens, but I move quickly to the preparedness part. In the preparedness part, we are these are the measures that we're putting in effect together with the different categories in the municipality of Athens that target the most vulnerable populations, and which include the hotline, a buddy system like lists of people that we know we should be checking on when we have heat waves, but also cooling centers, water that goes around the neighborhood in vans that is provided freely to people, and eventually, non-working hours, etc., etc. Also, one thing that I think is really important to mention is that we are discussing with insurance companies for a specific type of insurance that can help the city provide kind of a safety net for different people during heat waves, in triggering the capacity for the city to finance right before or as the heat wave is happening, rather than afterwards, to deal with the effects. And this is another thing that we're looking into, which I think is a very interesting type of preparedness for the city. It's called parametric insurance. And finally, the most important category is that we have to deal with for lowering temperatures is redesigning the city, which means bringing nature into the city much more radically than we've been doing up to now, bringing a lot more trees and bringing water to the surface of the city. One of the actions that I will quickly present is the Adrian Aqueduct cooling corridor. The Adrian Aqueduct is an aqueduct that was built in Roman times, 150 after Christ, and it runs for 20 kilometers from the outskirts of Athens, from the mountains outside of Athens all the way to the center of Athens. And so the idea is to, now this aqueduct has a lot of water in it that is unused, that goes into the sewage. And this water is clean and it's good for irrigation. So we want to tap into it and support a whole corridor of green spaces and spaces that can start bringing down the temperatures for the metropolitan area. And this is where I would like to finish. Thank you very much. And I hope that this ends up in a really interesting conversation. Thank you.
So our thanks to Eleni. Maintenant, je vais passer en français parce que notre prochain invité est...
Now speaking French, our next guest is from and in Grenoble. She is online. Anne-Cécile Fouvet, she's head of air, energy, and climate for the city of Grenoble. You're with us? Hello. Hello, Anne-Cécile. Hello, everybody. Just as a reminder, as a reporter for CNN, I covered the heat wave in Paris several years back. And this past year, extreme weather in Belgium with the floods that hit big and small cities. So Grenoble, tell us how you protect your residents against heat waves, which can take place there in Grenoble. And okay, you're thinking they're mountains. How can you have heat waves there? But you do, don't you? Absolutely. We often have to deal with this kind of thing. We have 450,000 people in the agglomeration, one of the major ones in France. And so we have to continue with what's been explained and presented by Eleni in Athens. We are also moving to adapt our territory to this new climate phenomenon, and helping to get our inhabitants, our residents, ready. We have a municipal heat wave plan. It's a document that structures the actions to be taken in terms of heat waves or major high temperatures coming through. So in Grenoble, sometimes it's quite warm in the summer, but we can see climate projections to 2050 we'll see increased pressure, increased temperature rises, because this year we have about 3 days of extreme heat on average in Grenoble. And looking at 2050, we'll have 43 additional days considered high extreme heat days. So you can see that there's a major issue. There's urgency here to get our municipality adjusted and ready for this climate issue. It's all part of our municipal climate plan to have this adaptation to extreme heat days. So the municipal climate plan has several specific targets. General public, so all of our residents, but specifically the most, say, sensitive or the most vulnerable amongst our residents. So these would be elder people, children, and babies, homeless population. They happen to be there. They're particularly vulnerable. We're thinking also about our civil servants, our public workers who are out there. There are 3,000 agents working for the city of Grenoble, some working in the public areas, so working in landscaping, urban cleanliness or urban cleaning, so they're exposed to the extreme heat. Similar to Athens, we have actions to improve public spaces and have cooling areas with plants, demineralization and presence of more water, and also improving knowledge. because we're all so far from knowing everything and understanding everything. So we're working very closely with the university to improve knowledge on these ideas of urban heat islands and looking at the public consequences of that. Now, as Athens showed us, we have this idea of a graduated scale that's been implemented by our prefecture, the state, with an initial level 1, which is a seasonal surveillance every year from June 1st to September 15th. Then you have level 2, which is when the weather the weather experts have slated a vigilance required. So we work very closely with Météo France. That's our meteorological provision agency, and they provide information to residents as well. We're at level 2. There's a warning. There's a heat warning that goes across all the French radio stations, and it's called Vigilance Jaune, so yellow vigilance level. Then the next level is level 3, where this is a heat wave alert, and this level is the most concerning for us, regarding our inhabitants' health, because the heat doesn't break at night. So one's body can't recover at night because the temperature stays high at night. And the max level for Grenoble and the whole Isère department is when temperature doesn't go below 19 degrees at night, or if it goes above 34 during the day, for 34 degrees during the day over 3 consecutive days. So it's a very specific rule, and this will trigger then alert 3, heat wave, and this is triggered by the prefecture, the préfet, and the mayor then must implement certain measures when this happens to inform residents, protect the residents. And then there's level 4, and this is a prime minister who announces this, and so far we haven't reached level 4, but it's slated for, so it means that we could, in the upcoming years, reach level 4. So level 3 then, heat wave alert. There's an information procedure that's implemented by the local municipality. You have to inform the public. It's the most important issue. People have to understand that something is coming, and they also have to be directly involved in protecting themselves. Certain number of actions. We open museums free of charge because these spaces are usually cooler, so school classes can come in, elder patients can come in, general public can come in free of charge. So they can come in and spend a few hours in a cool area. Urban parks are open 24/7 when we hit level 3. And then for people who are homeless or living in a precarious situation, we open up municipal showers and we hand out water for them. So this idea of information and prevention is essential for us because the residents have a lot of tools at their hands. In their hands, we have the coolness map, where they can go. We have parks and planted areas, rivers, swimming pools, mountains nearby, and there's advice, there's tips, suggesting families go hiking in the mountains with free busing, taking them from downtown. So this map is very handy as a support. We keep it updated. We update it every year. It's online on our website. And on the back of the map, there are a certain number of tips to keep your homes cool, and just the right things to do to resist the heat. So also very important in the idea of preventing or protecting during heat waves. We have water in the public spaces. We realize that water cools people off, but you have to be in contact with the water. So citizens, residents, they end up like going into public fountains and everywhere there's water. So it made sense to increase the availability of water in the public spaces. It takes some time because you have to organize this. You have to technically planned for these. And so we have systems like here on the photo on the left, temporary systems that are in place just during summer. They're connected to the drinking water network, and they're just sprays, misting, and sometimes we lend these to associations when they organize events. And this is a low cost offer with water in public spaces. And then we also realized that there was a need to improve our fountain systems, because in many cities in France you have decorative fountains, but they aren't really planned for people to go swimming in them. There's like a closed circuit water with no water renewal quality-wise, so if people drink it or swim in it. So we're working technically to make sure that our fountains can gradually move away from being just decorative fountains to fountains that will be places where people can get cooled off. And a very important element here in the public space is drinking waters, drinking fountains. We have 150 in Grenoble, and we realize that they're widely used in these extreme heat times. And this is a service provided by the municipality to our residents. And then we have to look at schools, daycare centers. At one of the last heat waves in 2020, just in fact not very far away, we realized we were wondering if we were to keep schools open or to close them, because it was really hot in the schools. But then we realized, in fact, the elected officials, after exchanging with the health care division, they in fact decided to maintain schools open because it meant that children were there in a supervised area where various systems could be implemented to protect them. And so they are better protected at school than, say, being at home alone if their parents are working, and they could be like in an apartment where it's really hot and left to their own means, left on their own because the parents have to go to work. So we realized it was more important to keep the school. It was better to keep the schools open. Some municipalities near Grenoble have decided to close schools. So we realized that there's no single unique solution. Kind of trial and error. We're trying to figure out what works best. We're trying to find the best organization of the public service for these during these heat waves. So we've got a lot to learn yet, and a lot to think about, and seeing how we adapt and adjust to this extreme heat. Now, just to give you an idea, in Grenoble we have 28 daycare centers and 77 schools. So it takes time to adapt and adjust the buildings to this new setting. We want to avoid too much of a rollout of air conditioning, so we go with other solutions. These are fans on the ceiling, and then UV protective windows or films on the windows, and then a system of air vents that are put on the windows so that the windows can be open during the night. So that brings in the cool air in the schools, but it stops intruders from coming in, of course. So this seems really interesting. So we're working on rolling this out across various schools. Anne-Cécile, can you hear me? Yes, I'm sorry, we need to move towards the end because we've got lots of questions. I see lots of questions coming in, and we want to have a word cloud. So if you wouldn't mind moving towards your conclusion, please. Sure, no problem. Another important point very quickly, another, say, tip, as it were, that we found for schools is to have very simple watering systems with hoses, water tips where you can spray the kids, because it's very efficient for keeping them cool. Also, we're working on nutrition, what meals kids should eat when we're in extreme heat situations. We have data sheets that are handy here. You can encourage for kids to take the right steps, make the right movements. And for elder patients, we have a system that's interesting. Now, this is a hotline where it's a calling system where elder people can be on these lists and be called frequently during extreme heat situations to see if they're doing okay. And if they don't answer, if they don't pick up the phone, then there's a solidarity chain that gets set up. There's a Red Cross, a rescue squad, the social service for elder patients to go in and check on them and just see if there's everything's okay. And then lastly, the agents, the people working for the City of Grenoble, we have an internal communication system that allows everyone to be protected themselves and protect their colleagues with adapted working hours, being able to work from home, different having breaks, and just having water bottles for them and fans, everything they need. Right, thank you very much. The Ministry of Health is from Grenoble, isn't he? He's a doctor, and I've actually already interviewed him myself. Okay, how about the word cloud? Let's see the word cloud. The question is, can we see that? In one word, what would you like to produce from these examples in your city? Looks like there were lots of ideas coming out of the various cities. Interesting ideas. Small cities, larger cities. Think about the small town in Finland. So biodiversity.
Tigre moustique.
The tiger mosquito.
Pathogène.
Pathogens, allergic elements. Is there anything else?
D'accord. OK, on va passer aux questions.
Right, let's move on to the questions. Cities aren't listened to, but are they not the key in a public policy with a vision, with a One Health vision? Should they not? In fact, they're not always involved in building up public policy. Anne, how about that?
I think the experiences are different. In some topics, indeed, cities are listened to more. But I think it's just since maybe the last decade that cities are voicing more, so standing up more and saying, okay, but we can contribute to the challenges we have. Please give us the opportunities to do so. So I think it's a lot about what we call multi-level governance. So it's both cities coming up with their own innovations and ideas and their own policies and identifying where they need help from national and international institutions and governments and vice versa. So I think we make progress on that.
Right. And here's Anne-Cécile, est-ce que vous voudriez ajouter?
Anne-Cécile, would you like to add something to that? Yes, I totally agree that cities are an important contact point for residents, and they have offers they can make offers on their own public spaces. There are things that need to be adjusted nationally, it's true, such as questions regarding temperature. At what temperature do the labels change? In Météo France, it's on the weather predictions are on a department level, but sometimes in city areas it can be very hot. That can be even hotter, severely hot for residents. But in fact, you don't have the heat wave declared across the nation. So I think we're in a phase where we're still just sort of trying to adjust and adapt things. But I think there's a lot of room for progress, and we can move forward together. We need to work hand in hand with state organizations. Next. How did you get the acceptance and how did you get population, get people to be on board with this?
Sometimes we don't even have to persuade them because they come themselves. And they often have better solutions than we have. But of course, what we are doing is that we are involving citizens from the early beginning and not coming up with our solutions, but involve them as soon as we have a question. So, for example, our sustainable energy plan has not been drafted by the experts from the municipal hall, but has been drafted by the citizens themselves. And the only thing that we did, we organized 3 Saturdays. We invited 100 people to contribute to it, provided some experts, and in the end, facilitators. And in the end, we had a sustainable energy plan drafted by citizens and not by us.
Okay.
So it's giving them a position and not having the solutions defined by ourselves, but listen to what their solutions might be, and then from our role see what we can contribute.
Okay. Même question, Anne-Cécile, parce que
The same question for Anne-Cécile. Maybe it's a matter of winning the hearts and minds of people with results, similar to what you did and what Utrecht did.
il y a plus de soutien.
When people see the results, you get more support to take it further. Yes, but like Utrecht said, citizens are really happy to contribute, way more than we think. We have a participative budget system where we have residents who propose the projects, and then they can be implemented with the city's help and budget. And we have often combating heat. It comes up a lot in the projects with the requests for new fountains, new water points, new spaces to cool off, more plants in parks. And this, in fact, goes hand in hand with the public policy, and it's confirming what public policy needs to do, and it helps them know that everyone is aware of the need. I spoke with the mayor from Myrivili in the east of Belgium, where we had the floods. I spoke with him recently, 6 months following the floods. And they have a project to rebuild the city, but they say there's not enough money to make it healthier, safer, and to more adapted to deal with heat waves. So there is a matter of funds. Can they be national, European? How did you finance, Anne-Cécile, what you did in the city? Well, we always look for funding, and European funding is part of the very substantial funds available to trigger projects. But if you want actions with a powerful effect in the public space, it has to be of a certain scope, and those actions have to be of a certain scope, and it takes money. When you demineralize a school playground, when you remove asphalt from the school playground to replace it with a lawn or gravel or gardens, it costs a lot of money, and the local municipality cannot always handle that. There's a need to have support from the outside world, keeping in mind all the benefits that represents in terms of preventing floods, more cool temperatures in the city, safer for the kids on the school grounds. And it reduces the heat in the city.
For you, have you assessed the health and social benefits of the successful measures you have implemented in Utrecht? If so, are there any publications in English? Many thanks for your inspiring intervention.
Thank you for that compliment. And not all the programs have been assessed on the health and social benefits, but we are doing that more and more. And yes, there are some publications. There will be some publications on the way, for example, for social renovation. So the energy transition, particularly in the most deprived neighborhoods, in combining health and income assistance. So yeah, there are several papers available. And I could always recommend to reach out via our website. We do have an English page as well, and I'm happy.
Which website is that?
It's Healthy Urban Living Utrecht.
Okay.
And I'm happy to share that later on with the documentation of this conference as well. And I'm willing to contribute and identify relevant sources.
Ok, il me reste 3 minutes. Question pour Anne-Cécile. Comment favoriser cette biodiversité?
Okay, how to favor biodiversity in the city that's required to combat global warming, although avoiding biological vectors that can also transmit diseases? Well, we're on that. We're working on adding more green, more plants in parks and areas, and that helps improve biodiversity. We're also looking at the presence of water. I saw that in the word cloud there was the tiger mosquito that came out. Yes, we have that problem in Grenoble. How can we increase water in public spaces? But if you increase water in public spaces, it has to be water that's not stagnant, right? So it has to be water in movement to avoid the tiger mosquitoes settling in there. But that's the difficulty in what we do, is taking these different issues, these different desires, these different needs and intentions, and implementing those, but producing the best results for our residents and for the lifestyle and the city's life setting. So they're very complex topics that require a lot of cross-cutting initiatives across the divisions and departments, and that's why it's really good to have the health ministry. They have their own concerns. You have the environment division. You have the green space, the green area people, and they all have their own initiatives, and especially regarding the management of the green spaces, because it's great to plant things, but you have to be able to maintain those later on, and they have to be adapted and suitable for climate change, and there are allergy agents, allergens, and so there's collective initiative there that makes all this possible through our document called the Climate Plan, and this is where we come together to decide on the best options. So the idea of transversality or cross-cutting is increasingly applied across municipalities, and this has to be encouraged and continued and maintained over time. It's essential. Okay, one last question quickly. Can we hope to get small towns, small cities involved in improvements, or is it really only for big cities due to the investments that it requires? Quickly, Anne-Cécile. And then Miriam. Well, small cities, small towns have a lot of drivers available without it being extremely costly, because often we can say, well, there's a matter of changing lifestyle, changing habits. As an example, in daycare centers, in childminding centers, today what we try to do is make sure that the clothes dryers aren't used in the middle of summer. Sheets and everything that's washed frequently in daycare centers, we want them to be hung out to dry, as opposed to putting them in a dryer that releases a lot of heat in the room, like right next to the daycare center. So these are just habit changes, and you need to support those. You need to accompany those, but it doesn't cost anything. It doesn't cost any money. It's just doing things differently, and it's adapting the way we do things to these new temperatures. And so it leaves a lot of food for thought as to how we can adapt and adjust without requiring a major investment.
Final word. I mean, I know. How do we pay for these things in a small town? But maybe you've got one more idea you can add to that.
In the Netherlands, we have the province. The province is responsible for green biodiversity as well, and we have a strong a tradition of working together. So we're always working in networks, jointly with the provinces, but with the smaller municipalities as well. And of course, the funding is a local level, or we go to the national level, or together with the regional level. But I think it's being in this infrastructure of networks, of public and private organizations, is where you find the best practices and where you can upscale your lessons and make things more affordable as well, because you jointly improve and learn and exchange that. So it's all about connection in hard way and in soft ways.
Yes. Miriam, Anne-Cécile, Eleni, a round of applause for the three of them. Thank you very much. D'entendre des villes.
Thank you very much for hearing from the cities. We'll take a quick break now. Then, so at 3:10, we'll look at how we can facilitate favorable action for health and climate. Not facilitate, but favorable. See you in a few moments.